Thank you.
I call Andrew Little.
I had the opportunity to take a call on the South Taranaki District Council Cold Creek Rural Water Supply Bill. And Mr Chairman, I think with all due respect to the Honourable Chester Borrows, is that his account is a somewhat sweetened account, a sugar-coated account of what happened. And notwithstanding the Labour Party support for this bill, I think it is important for the record to show that how we got here and what the residual concerns are for the Labour Party are questions of process. And if there's one thing that has come to define and mark this government is its lack of respect for due process. We know from the previous speakers and indeed from Mr Borrows himself that the background to this scheme is that it was funded through a scheme in place at the time. There was a dollar for dollar or 50% subsidy, public subsidy for the scheme. And during the process of the local authority amalgamations and changes in the late 1980s, it became the responsibility and the property of the South Taranaki District Council, inherited from the old Egmont County Council. And so the fact that there was a 50% subsidy from the government of the day reflected that the two sets of interests, that the farmers who were part of the scheme would get value from having a water supply to supply their farms and the troughs and the people who lived there, and also that there was a community benefit in having good, viable farms at a time when, frankly, it was a renaissance of the beginning of the renaissance of farming, of dairy farming. Taranaki has been a stronghold in dairy farming for many years, even before this time. So it occupied a very important place, but the scheme remained in public hands, notwithstanding the fact that the government provided 50% of the cost, because it reflected the sets of interest. And the other public contribution was, of course, in the early life of the scheme, much of the maintenance was undertaken by the local council at their expense, with no pass-on of costs to the farmers who were subscribers to it. The council looked after the operation and the treatment plant and the headworks. So that was over a period of time, that was a considerable expense. Then there was a move on to effectively privatise it, for the local authority to divest their interests in it. And it's interesting that at that meeting, and I have the minutes of that meeting, and although Mr Borrows says there was no bullying, the minutes are pretty clear about what was said and who said it and when. And it's interesting that the Chief Executive of the South Taranaki District Council is quoted as saying, when there was some resistance to the idea of privatising it, and he himself was expressing some reservations, he said, "The council has not changed tack. The decision on the books, which was about divestment, is still to investigate divestment via a local bill, but there is now a stronger view that it is a strategic asset and therefore that the council should retain it." Mr Borrows was at the crucial meeting on the 15th of August in 2011, as was another member of this House, Shane O'Doon. Both good members, but they were at a meeting to push through and influence the council to bring about this divestment. And here is the point. They said that if the council did not agree, then it would come to Parliament. They said, and Mr Shane O'Doon is quoted as saying, if the Cold Creek community failed in their divestment request, then there would be some legislative program through Parliament that would bring about the kind of ownership they desired. And he went on to say that if the council did not proceed with divestment, then they would take the community, the members of the scheme would take legal action, which would cost a lot of money and headache for both parties. So the threat was there, and that's what the concern is. Now that has led to an issue about, and one of the things that the bill provides for is there is to be a referendum on divestment of the scheme. And the question is whether it should just be those who are subscribers to the scheme, or whether it should be the wider community. And Andrew Williams of New Zealand First has an SOP calling for a broader referendum base, and we support that referendum. Now we support the bill, but we support that referendum because we think that that's what is needed to repair the due process, or the process that hasn't been followed. Thank you.
Ko Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Take a call on the South Taranaki District